is up, people of the internet? My name is Jude, and welcome to Keep It Literature, where I talk about books and things. And I've been procrastinating on something. I'm going to be a little bit honest with you. I'm going to be a little bit real with you right now. We're always keeping it lit here, and part of being lit is being honest. So I need to be honest with you. I procrastinated. I haven't done my April reading wrap-up yet, and I got to do that. And I decided that tonight, well, it's the night to do my reading wrap-up. So, come along with me. Let's go on a journey through my reading habits of April, where I had a variety of different books because April is the month that I got back into reading religiously, and I've been reading constantly throughout the month of April, and I've got a list of 10 books, count it, 10 books that I want to share with you. And I think there was one book as well that I didn't finish. And let's go ahead and get started with the one I didn't finish, which is Meddling Kids by Edgar Quintero. It's billed as this adult-like Scooby-Doo, where most of the cast has PTSD and is kind of mixed with... It's supposed to be mixed with like Cthulhu and stuff, and it sounds very interesting to me because I'm a big fan of like the cosmic horror genre, and I'm feeling a little nostalgic for Scooby-Doo. But this goes wrong. This goes so wrong. What he does is he tries to make up words that just do not exist. In fact, I found myself Googling a term that he used to find out that the only other mention of that word is someone else having the same problem. Now, I get that this can be cute, this can be funny, but it's just not pulled off well. Also, there is fourth wall breaks, which again can be pulled off well, but Edgar doesn't do it. I don't know why I couldn't get into this book. It's just, I saw a lot of good reviews on it, but for me personally, I couldn't get past it. Also, one of the things that is prominent in it is fourth wall breaks and splits the writing style between a normal novel. For some reason, it goes into screenplay format. And that just doesn't vibe with me. It's not to my taste. Maybe it's to other people's taste. I won't rag on it too much because I know some people are more keen to more experimental types of writing, but I just don't think that this style of writing was pulled off well within this book because it just made it such a jarring interruption with the actual story. Like, that he will actually write into the book that someone looks at the camera. So I assume that he meant that they look at the person reading it like it's some sort of fucking office bit. But it just did not vibe with me that well. And so I just really couldn't move past it. So unfortunately, about 50 pages into it, I did not finish it. Now, I might slog myself back into the mix. I might open that bad baby right back the fuck up and try to go through it and kind of dissect it and just show you all where it went wrong. But as of now, for my pure reading enjoyment, I did not finish the book. That's not to say that it might not be your cup of tea, but it definitely wasn't mine. On to the 10 books that I did enjoy that really tickled my fancy. The first two on our list is All Systems Red and Artificial Condition, the first two books of the Murderbot Diaries. And the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells is a series of novellas centered around Murderbot. Self-dubbed that because there was an accident that went off back in his heyday and where he, kind of killed a couple of people. But that's okay because afterwards he hacked his governor module because he really wanted that sense of freedom. And so it's about this artificial intelligent battle robot that's designed for security as he navigates his way through the cosmos, taking on different missions with different groups and really finding his sense of self. And it's just so fascinating because he is a machine meant to strictly for defense and security and to kill for his client. And this shows him breaking those chains and discovering who he wants to be, discovering the path that he wants to go through. And honestly, the path that he wants to go through is him chillaxing while he watches space operas and different little television shows that he downloads and just wants to watch. But he also wants to know what happened in his past, what caused him to go crazy during that time. So it's this very interesting concept of someone searching for their place in this huge, wide galaxy. And I just really thoroughly enjoy the writing in this. Martha Wells is very talented with the way she writes. The comedy mixes with the action very nicely. And if you're looking for a quick read, I do suggest these because they are beautifully written. And there's no harm in trying out the first one. It only takes a little bit of time to read. And I think you would thoroughly enjoy it if you like stuff like Detroit Become Human, because it just is... It ponders the question of what if robots gain sentience, and Murderbot is just a really good character. He's really well written, and it's just humorous with the way he thinks about things, and I just enjoy reading about him. It's a feel-good novel because it doesn't get too deep, but the underlying themes is something to question of what it means to be yourself in a place where, you know, you're supposed to be a machine. But on to the second one. Grady Hendrix wrote a couple books, and I've read 2 of them so far. The first one is Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which I really did like. These books, and My Best Friend's Exorcism, these 2 books were really fun, and I think that they really appeal to my sense of nostalgia for Goosebumps, because it feels like a grown-up Goosebumps, and it's just it's funny to read, but it also has some adult themes. So there is a little bit of a PSA, a little bit of warning. There is graphic content in these books. Southern Book Club Guides to Slaying Vampires is about middle-aged women in a book club who are kind of involved in a little conspiracy theory about their neighbor who might be a vampire. And they kind of devolve into this obsession, at least the main character does, where she is obsessed with finding out the secret about this gentleman who has moved in across the street. And it's really fun to read. It doesn't take too long. The pacing is pretty quick in it, but there is a little section that it falls short in, which is prominent in My Best Friend's Exorcism as well, where, like, in the Deep South, there is things that are exaggerated just because I think Grady Hendrix is wanting to show you the setting of Charleston in the 70s and 80s, and it's all right. It's all right, but there's definitely room for improvement there. But it is a fun read, and I do suggest you check it out if you like Goosebumps as a kid and you're looking for something that really reminds you. These 2 books really scratch that itch for me. So the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, it has a lot of humorous points in it, and if you really want to read from this perspective of like a soccer mom type, getting into deep occultist type scenario where she has to fight a vampire, it's fun. It's not meant to be super deep. It's not meant to really challenge your viewpoint of the world, but it's fun. And as for My Best Friend's Exorcism, I think it's geared more towards a young adult audience, or new adult, whatever that is. But it's kind of meant to show perspective of the 80s. It's a nice 80s romp, if you will. If you're very nostalgic for references from there, they're not the best of reads. They're not 10 out of 10s, but they are pretty solid if you're looking for something to break up the pace. I like Grady Hendrix, and I'm going to read more of his stuff. But these 2 books were around 7 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s maybe. But they... Oh, hey, Frank. Hold on. I got something to show you. It's my cat, Frank. My cat, Frank, is a really pretty cat, and he's very mischievous, and he likes to tear down curtains a lot. But I love him because he's really fun. He's a really fun dude. Hey, Frank, say hello to the YouTube audience. Frankie! Oh, okay. You want down. Okay. So on to the next two books, which is The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This is probably my favorite series to deal with a wizard named Harry, because Harry Dresden is such a fun character to read about. I finished the first two novels, or I didn't finish the second novel, but I'm on to the second novel. But I finished the first novel, Stormfront, and it really sets the stage for a really great series. I think Jim Butcher is awesome with his writing style, the way that the world acts, and if you're a fan of Constantine, these books will really vibe with you, because the books it's just so fun. There's fairies, there's werewolves, there's vampires, there's magicians, there's different magical creatures, but it's all set in the city of Chicago, and it has that really grim undertone, kind of like the show Gotham, where you have mafia families and you have the police, and Harry is kind of caught up in the middle of all of it. But overall, I think it's a very solid series and a very solid foundation for me to continue on to the next books. So it's definitely a series that I will continue, and it's very fun to read. So on to the next one, The Outsiders by S.E Hinton. This was a reread because I've read this a couple times in my life. I read it in one day while I was at work because, I don't have anything better to do like my job. But S.E Hinton, I believe she is a very phenomenal writer. I love the way that she does her characters and the camaraderie with the found family of the Greasers, and just this setting of the story. It's such a beautiful little tale, and of course I cried again. I cried the first time I read The Outsiders. I cried the second time, third time, fourth time. I'll cry every time I read The Outsiders. It's a classic, and a lot of schools do have it as suggested reading or required reading, and it really pertains to where you grow up, but I think this book is very phenomenal, so it was really refreshing to give it a nice little reread. So on to the next one, What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Not the best review that I gave this month, unfortunately. It's a decent book. It's a decent read, so don't let me dissuade you from reading it, because it's good. It's just, the premise of the book is that it's a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. But what it fails to do is it fails to actually make it any different. I didn't see many changes that would make it prominent for a retelling, because it's set in a very similar time period. It's actually set maybe 60 years ahead of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and there's not really a lot of changes. The way that it does body horror, though, and if you like mushrooms, it does have a fungus aspect to it that is really more prominent in the story. But I don't know. Not enough was new for it to get a better rating out of me. It's just kind of a rehashing, rather than a complete revamp of it. It doesn't modernize it in any way, but it is fun to read about, and it's very quick to read. It just didn't do enough new for it to warrant a better rating. So it was okay. I am interested in reading more by T. Kingfisher, because I do like the way that they write. It's just this particular book, maybe it wasn't the greatest first read from the author. So I didn't give it that high of a rating, but it was still a decent read. On to Scott Lynch, and oh my fucking god, Scott Lynch! Scott Lynch, you motherfucker! You have made my new favorite fantasy series, which is The Lies of Locke Lamora. I am late to get on the Gentleman Bastards train, but holy shit, this fucking series is phenomenal. I read it within a couple days of each other, and I plan to digest the first book, read another book while I digested that book, but I couldn't. I just binged straight through the second book. So I took on The Lies of Locke Lamora and Red Seas Under Red Skies, and both of these books are so phenomenal. I will say that the first book is better than the second one, but I think that's because the setting of it is just so well done And I'm not saying the second one is bad, but both of these books just had me enthralled. I was gripped to the edge of my seat. I couldn't stop reading them. I'm currently on the third book, and it's just going so well. Locke Lamora is just such a good protagonist to follow. Think of this book as a kind of mix of like Ocean's 11 and Game of Thrones, where you're following this band of thieves, this found family, around as they pull off little hijinks and heists and little scams. But Locke Lamora and the Gentleman Bastards, their way of stealing is more of like the con man's way. They're not holding people up in the middle of the road. They're not pickpocketing people, although they're very fucking good at it. Their idea is to go for something more grand, a more flashy approach. And they do this by conning nobles and getting into all kinds of hijinks. But they do meet their match when a new player comes into town, and it gets really, really intense. And I felt a lot of emotions reading through this book, but the way that Scott Lynch writes, it really engrosses you into the world of the Gentleman Bastards, the way he describes the setting, the way he describes everything going on. It just feels like you are there. It feels like you can reach out and touch something, or that you are part of the locals, because it's just totally engrossing. It wraps you up in the story, and all of a sudden you are just watching everything play out before your eyes, the twists, the turns. I just can't give enough praise for it, and I really want to do a separate review specifically for these books, because I don't think I'll have enough time with this one. So I will leave this very light with the Gentleman Bastard sequence, but books 1 and 2 are just phenomenal. And if it's on your TBR, I do recommend you go ahead and hop on this fucking Gentleman Bastard train and actually get into the fucking books, because they're so fucking good. And finally, Mike Bockoven, Fantasticland. And this is a very decent read, except I didn't read it. I listened to it, and I think that is how this book is meant to be digested. Because the way the book is written, it's a series of interviews about some incidents that happened at Fantasticland, a Disneyland stand-in for this fictional plot where a hurricane has came through Florida, and this theme park is isolated from the rest of humanity. And within this theme park is a group of workers, mostly college-age kids, high school kids, who work there and were just cut off. And it just, within a few days, it devolves into utter chaos. It's sort of like Lord of the Flies meets the Hunger Games, where a bunch of different factions form, and they're all kind of at war with each other. And the way that this is told is through interviews with some of the survivors. And oh man, this is such a good book to listen to. I got it on Audible, and it's very graphic, it's very gory, and it's just action packed. And I wholly recommend it, because it's such a fun fucking read. You have the maintenance men who stuck to the tunnels. You have freaks, the carnival freaks who just made this show of decapitated heads. You have people in the superhero part of the park who name themselves the Deadpools. You have the people who hold up in the pirate section, who are ultimately just fucking gruesome. They're the type to strike first, to ask questions later. And you have wars between these 6 different groups, and it's just gruesome and fun and exhilarating. And there's just one part of the book, and it revolves around these 2 kids who adorn themselves as hogheads and was going on a serial killing spree, and they find this dude in a hotel. And that chapter, it deserves a book on its own. The Mike Bockoven is just so good with his stories that he's telling within this novel. I really want to find something else by him similar, or even find a similar book. But it was just a really fun book to listen to. But overall, I mean, it was a really good month with April. It was a really good month. And I know I kind of sped through this a little bit, but I just didn't want to go on too long. But the April books were pretty hot. The Who. If I had to go with my favorites overall, of course I'm going to go back to this Scott Lynch Gentleman Bastard sequence. It's just super fun to read, and those two really shined above the rest. But overall, none of these books were really terrible. I didn't have a book that I particularly didn't like besides Meddling Kids. So if you're looking for some good reads, I mean, take a pick out of these. There's some really good books, and April was a good month to keep it lit. Always, if you like this video, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe and comment some of your book recommendations. I'm really looking forward to building a community that I can talk to. So, if you comment on my videos, I promise I will respond, because I need some friends. I need some book recs. I need to know what's working, what's not working. Tell me if this sucked. I don't care. But I do appreciate you watching, and thanks for keeping it lit. That's so corny. I'm a corny dude, though. I like to get silly, but I'm glad I could get silly with you. Take care, all, and have a good rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is. Have fun, be safe.